Hello and welcome, Will. Pleasure having you here today. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. I'm really looking forward to talking about the book a bit.
Nice, absolutely. So we're here to chat a little bit about your career, your journey so far, and most importantly, the second edition of 101 UX Principles, Actionable Solutions for Product Design Success, the second edition. The first question I suppose I'd have is if you could tell us a little bit about yourself, your career so far, and what brought you here.
Yeah, sure. So I think by just fortune of when I was born, I've ended up spending about 25 years in UX. So from before UX was even a thing, when it was called human-computer interaction and UX wasn't really like a term, just because the age that I am, I spent my teenage years building websites out of my bedroom in my parents' house, went on to do a computer science degree and just started focusing more and more on interaction design, HCI, and I guess elements of cognitive psychology of how people interact with systems. Just became more and more interested in UX, and I've kind of built a career out of it over the years of doing more and more UX and design related roles.
That's brilliant. And at what point did you think to yourself, hang on a minute, there's not a lot of good resources out there, I think I should write a book about UX design?
Yeah, I suppose I wrote the book because I wanted to. It's kind of a weird answer, but I think, you know, there's always going to be prior art in anything you go into. Like whatever field you're in, there's a ton of great books already. It doesn't mean that you can't write another one. I realized that over the years, I mean, I've done freelance, contract, startups, big company, small company. I've done like pretty much every permutation of UX work that you can think of. And I found that solve the same problems over and over again. So you come to a problem and you think, well, I remember when I did this 2 years ago or 5 years ago. And after a while, you realize that it's all been sort of compiled into your brain in like a blob of experience. And the book was an exercise to kind of unpick that, to take all of those principles apart and think, well, why do I think this? Right? So a search control, form fields, the pattern of how someone moves through an e-commerce store. Like, why do I think these are done in a certain way? And what's the research? What's the best practice? How do I solve these problems? So yeah, the book was a chance to kind of unpack all of that and turn it all into some principles that people can learn from, hopefully.
Lovely. And that was the first edition, and here we are now, right after the publication of the second edition. So tell us what's new in this edition, what's different, what's better?
I think a lot of it's better. I've rewritten about 80% of the content. So a lot of it's been updated where kind of things have changed or the state of the art has moved on and we think there are better ways of doing stuff. But also there's more practical examples in there. And I think a lot of the time I got asked by people who read the first edition, you know, how do I apply this stuff into my everyday work? When the principles meet the messy reality of working in an organization, how do I actually do this stuff? So there's a lot more in terms of practical examples. There's also more about dealing with kind of enterprise software as well as just consumer. I think the first edition was quite focused around kind of consumer and mobile stuff. The second one has all that, and it's also broadened it out to more kind of enterprise and the kind of software that, you know, thousands of designers work in every day and isn't you know, smartphone apps. It's quite boring B2B software that still needs to be usable.
You've touched upon it right now, but just wanted to chat a little bit more about the state of UX design today. What's happening right now, and what are the topics that you felt like were really necessary to address in this new edition?
I think UX has kind of matured in the last few years. I think it's kind of been around for long enough now that it is respected in most organizations. 10 years ago, it was really a luxury for a team to hire a UX designer or an interface designer. They would just get, you know, the people who built the software would probably build the front end as well with not too much thought around the usability of it. So UX has kind of matured to the point where designers have got a seat at the table now. They are involved in influencing product decisions and features, and also they have that responsibility as well to help influence that stuff for good and really fight for the user. And I think we're seeing a lot more awareness of things like design ethics, accessibility, and UX designers really trying to do the right thing in organizations. I also think that there's been a big development in kind of other interfaces. So voice interfaces like Alexa or Siri. And I guess the future is augmented reality and VR, and the usability of those kind of products is not well established at all. So I think that's what the next kind of 10 years looks like for UX people.
If you talk about the different audiences that tend to reach for your book, we've got some people who've been in UX for, let's say, a decade or more. We've got people who are trying to build a portfolio. We've got complete beginners. What can we all get out of this book?
So I do think the book is really good for people who are new to the industry. If you've done a course or a boot camp or a degree, you'll have read Design of Everyday Things and Don't Make Me Think and all of those kind of classics. I think it supplements those really well with kind of practical examples of how you do this in modern interface design. I think it can definitely help more established people too. I've definitely had feedback from pretty senior UX designers that it has made them think about stuff differently and challenge their kind of preconceived ideas about how they do things. So I think it can be useful for more established designers as well. In the hiring market, I think we're seeing portfolios become more important than ever for new designers or people trying to get into the field. I think take-home tasks are falling out of favour a little bit, so are cover letters. I think the portfolio is still a really important way of kind of getting across what you do in UX. So yeah, it would definitely help people build portfolios because they can show real examples of how they've solved problems. And when you're building a UX portfolio, it's not really about finished UI. Yeah, you want to see that, but mostly what you want to see is how did they understand the problem? How did they break the problem down, and how did they empathize with the users and create solutions? And I think the book would definitely help people do that.
Brilliant. What would you like them to be able to accomplish by the time they've read this book?
I think by the end of the book, they've got a reference guide that they can flip back to. So it's kind of, it's an opinionated book, right? It tells you this is the best way to do a thing. Now, will that be the best way every time? Maybe not, right? But it'll get you 80% of the way there. And the last little bit of tweaks or domain-specific stuff you can do yourself. But it's kind of a template where out of the box, if you do stuff this way, it will work for the vast majority of users most of the time. And that's kind of the idea. So in software development, there's a thing called opinionated frameworks. A really big one a few years ago was a thing called Rails, Ruby on Rails. And that got so popular because you didn't have to configure it much. You just set it up and out of the box, it would be like 80% there. This book is kind of like that, but for UX.
So is it a little bit of an out-of-the-box solution for people who might not have years and years of experience to still be able to implement good UX design?
Yeah, I think so. I hope so. And I also think it's good for people who are transitioning into UX or have to work closely with UX teams. So if you work in marketing or you work in product management or project management, it's a good read for those people because they can understand why the designers are making certain kinds of decisions. And obviously if there are good usability reasons not to do something, they can kind of be aware of that as well.
Lovely. Are there any particular examples that are new in this edition that you are proud of or of having found or maybe even worked on?
Yeah, I haven't put much stuff in that I've worked on because that felt really unfair. But yeah, I mean, one of the ones that springs to mind that, so there's a whole section about search, about how you do search, how you present the search control, how you present the search results, filter, because search is such a big part of shopping, dating, maps, everything that you use, right? You need to search for stuff. One of the great examples in there is from Spotify. I think Spotify get a lot of stuff right in their interface. So on Spotify search control, you tap the search button and it moves your cursor to the search field, pops the keyboard automatically and shows you all of your recent searches. And it's just perfection, it's exactly what you want. And I think compare that to where it's done badly. The search controls are hidden. You have to find them, you have to expose them, then you have to kind of pop the keyboard up on your phone. And they just really thought it through. And there's a ton of examples like that in the book of really nice interaction design.
Yeah. Would you say that measuring success in UX is become easier to measure? If we talk about things like cart abandonment or interacting with different parts of the website. Has that improved in the last couple of years as well, or are we still kind of floating?
I think it's got easier to measure in some ways and harder in others. So I think, we're drowning in data and analytics and metrics, right? So we can look at checkout conversion, we can look at page times and conversion funnels. There's a lot of stuff that you can do to really see how people are using your products. There's lots of analytics tools that will actually record every single click on every single screen and let you replay customer journeys. So we're not short of data to analyze, but I think we are still struggling to understand the qualitative side of things. You get surveys that say, how do you feel about this page? I liked it, I didn't like it. But I mean, it's still quite unsophisticated. I don't think we're really doing really well in understanding people's feelings around products. Part of the problem, part of the reason for that is that people can leave so easily, right? So another competitor, another version of what you're selling is available like 10 seconds away on a Google search. People don't complain about your thing, they just leave and go to the next thing. So you almost don't really get a second chance.
Are there any people that inspire you in the UX space, and what did you learn from them?
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty old school, so I trained with the Nielsen Norman group, so Jakob Nielsen and Don Norman, and one of their guys, Bruce Tognazini, who worked on the Apple human interface guidelines. He kind of invented the human interface group inside Apple. I've done some work with him, well, training with him years ago now, and they're all fantastic. And Don Norman's book, The Design of Everyday Things, it's old now. It's like 35 years old. It's pretty dated, and I think anyone who has been in UX for a long time will find it all pretty second nature. But I still think it's great for people who are new to the field, and I still think people who haven't spent much time doing UX can still learn a ton from it, because it's not just limited to software. It's about door handles and everything else that you use.
Are there any projects that you're particularly proud of having worked on?
Over the years, I've worked for lots of really high-profile products and services, consumer and B2B, and household brands. Optimizing their UX and not only making their kind of purchasing and their websites better, but also the interfaces of their products as well.
Brilliant. How is your book different from other resources on the market right now?
I think the book's pretty unique. So there are a lot of kind of broad UX usability books that are all really good. I think there's also kind of themed usability in UX books that are about a certain vertical or a certain approach. I think this book is kind of, it's a how-to guide, it's a shortcut to delivering good experiences. And pretty much anything you can deliver in digital is going to benefit from some of the principles in this book.
So is there an audio version of 101?
So we just released the audiobook version on Audible. It's taken a lot of work to kind of repurpose it. It's unabridged, so it's the whole book, but it also has like a PDF of all of the visual examples that are referred to by the narrator. It's been expertly narrated. It sounds fantastic. I'm so pleased with how it turned out. So if you like to listen to books instead of read them, then please check it out, because it's really good.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Will. It was really interesting. I think we've covered a lot of interesting topics, and people will have a good idea about all the goodies that are hidden in the pages of your new book. So thank you so much, and good luck on your future endeavors.
Thank you. It's been great to talk to you.